the evening of the 17th of June. I'm about to start a second Recollections tape. I laugh because I noticed I had jotted a little thing down here that I remember my father telling me about his father. Of course, his father was born in Germany and grew up over there, as a matter of fact. And his father used to say things like, throw the cow over the fence some hay, which of course in German would make perfect sense because of the fact that the case of the nouns would be indicated by the endings, but in English, of course, it sounds a little bit strange. My earliest recollections are at Avenue M. We lived in an apartment over seems to me it was over, it may have been over and adjacent to a ice cream parlor. And this was, unless I'm sadly mistaken, from this Avenue M station, one could see the Vitagraph studios. I don't know whether my mother worked there at this time. She may well have. At any rate, it was upstairs and looked back on a small backyard, to which we didn't have access, of course, being on the second floor. And the train station, the BMT subway train station, was a very short distance away. I would actually have to go back and look at it. If you ever get to look at my Brooklyn pictures, you'll find a picture of the back of the house taken from the Avenue M station, and it will give you some idea how close it is. I don't remember too much about that area. Surprisingly, I remember a few things like running my finger along the windowsill and eating or licking the dirt which I picked up, and perhaps due to some dietary deficiency. Anyway, I also remember being, my grandmother took care of me, since my mother was working and father was working too. I remember my grandmother took me to the butcher once, and I have a feeling that the butcher shop was immediately adjacent to or underneath the Avenue M station. At any rate, being a child, I pulled my hand away from hers while she was talking to the butcher, and when she finished, of course, I was nowhere in sight. I wasn't lost. I merely went outside and walked up the street parallel to the BMT train tracks. I finally wandered home. I imagine the old lady was frantic, though. The other thing I remember, of course, is the small door which was put in the hallway. The entry to our apartment was through a hallway, one wall of which was the back wall of the ice cream parlor, the wall in back of the serving counter. And they had a little door put in, which wasn't big enough for anybody with someone my size to crawl through, to deliver ice cream. But at that time, I thought they had put it there for my convenience to go in and out of the store. This is also the place where the statue of the Sacred Heart, that's Jesus Christ with his hands pulling back his robe, showing a heart surrounded by thorns and all this sort of good stuff. And one day I was in the living room, which seemed to me was kind of a gloomy place because it was separate from the windows in the front of the building and separated also from the windows in back of the building. But at any rate, my grandmother came in to me there and said, "Fritz, to whom are you talking?" And I said, "Well, I'm talking to the statue." And she says, "Well, why are you talking to the statue?" And I said, "Well, because it talked to me." Now, ever since then, or ever since my recollection of this, I have wondered what the statue said to me, if anything. And it might be just as well that I don't know. The next place along that we lived was, I believe, Ulmer Park. I never realized it was obviously named after the German city of Ulm. And at any rate, we again lived upstairs there. And the biggest thrill, you might say, of that period was the fact that the night before Christmas, I woke up and my parents had gone out and left me. I don't know whether my grandmother was there or not. I have a feeling she was living with one of the other children. But I was by myself in my bedroom when I woke up, and I looked down and I saw that my Christmas stocking, which hung on the end of the bed, was empty, which caused a great deal of consternation in me, so that I started bellowing. And my mother and father could hear me bellowing down wherever they were outside the house. And so they quickly rushed back and assured me that the stocking was not supposed to be filled that night, but would be appropriately filled on Christmas evening. This was where I used to visit the farm, Gus's farm in Somerville, New Jersey. He had 50,000 or 5,000 white leghorns and quite a bit of acreage. But I used to be very happy to go up there because it was always exciting. One day he came along. I guess only my grandmother was home. And in his truck, Model T truck, and asked, at the conclusion of his visit, he asked whether I'd like to go up the country. Of course, I was delighted. I rushed up to my room and grabbed the suitcase and threw it into the truck and went off to the farm with Gus. Well, I guess I was a little naive, assuming that suitcases were always packed for trips, because all this suitcase had in it was stockings. However, that didn't bother me. I don't remember what I wore or what happened, anything. But I also remember being up there on the farm, and we used to, his two daughters, Vivian and Eloise, used to spend a good deal of time with me, of course. One of the things we used to do was take the trash out to burn in the backyard, and we'd take a couple of potatoes out with us and throw them in with the trash. When the trash was finished burning, why we'd pull out these blackened nuggets and break them open and have very delicious baked potato. I also remember eating the bran and salt that they used to feed the cows. Another incident that stands out very strongly in my mind was the time that Gus's dog got really old, and it was on its last legs. And so you didn't take those animals to the vets then. Up there, of course, you just shot them. So we took him out, and he dug a grave, and he was going to shoot the dog, who was standing a little distance away. And being callous about death, as most children are, I said to him, well, instead of shooting the dog there and having to drag him over to the grave and put him in, why don't you have him stand next to the grave and then shoot him? Which he thought was a good idea, and which he did, and the dog died and fell into the ditch. I remember at the farm, we used to have buckets in the hallway, so in the middle of the night you could hear the tinkle of people relieving themselves, because the two-holer was outside the house about 100 feet down the lane, and it was a cold night. It was not the kind of thing you would look forward to doing. One of the great pleasures of going up and visiting with Gus was sleeping on the feather beds. I don't know what they would be like to me now, but as a small child, I remember sinking into them like sinking into a cloud. We used to do all sorts of... I remember going over to the adjacent farm and pulling up carrots that were growing, just wiping off the dirt and eating them. I guess I had a better appetite than I do now. Sometimes I would go up to the country with Gus on the train. I remember one time at Grand Central Station, being a spoiled brat, I wanted something that was on sale there, some toy or something I obviously didn't need, and Gus wasn't about to pay for it. So I remember kicking and lying down and kicking and screaming, shades of Barbara, Gus just calmly waited until I was finished, then took me on the train, and we went off. He happily, and me perhaps not. I remember there's a picture in the albums of me in a white cap and an overcoat, and in the background are a bunch of skaters on a pond in the distance. And I distinctly remember my father saying to me at the time, you pose here, and I'll get you and the skaters in the picture too, and it'll look like you're one of the skaters. Well, that was very thrilling and all that. The next place I recall is Kings Highway. We lived, I would guess, about 3 blocks west of the BMT station there, again over a store. This was a thing in Brooklyn, I guess. And it was on the south side of the street. I remember at that time, the only thing I remember of my toys is I had a Raggedy Ann doll, which I liked very much. And unless my memory is very sadly off, it was here that my mother bought me a set of the books of knowledge, which until I could read, I got a good deal of pleasure out of looking at the pictures. We moved from that place. I'm not sure of the sequence here. I believe we next moved into an apartment on the other side of the railroad station, on the east side of the railroad station, very short distance from it. And this is where I remember that in another tantrum, you wouldn't think from my calm demeanor at present time that I had tantrums, but I did. And I locked myself in the bathroom, and I couldn't unlock the door to come out, so they had to call the fire department, and I believe they came in through the window to get me out. This was also where I was fiddling around in a chair on the arm of an overstuffed chair, and fell and banged my head on a radiator. And I guess that might explain a lot of things about my later life, because I still have the car. We lived in a house which was also, as I recall, you could see the apartment house we lived in from the house. It was that close. It was on the other side of Kings Highway, on the south side compared to the north side. It was here I started to go to school. I say started because I didn't finish. My mother was working, and I don't know where my grandmother was at this time. I don't know if she was home or not. At any rate, they took me down to St. Brendan's School and arranged that I would have a lunch at the school rather than going home the way most of the children did. Well, I spent the morning in the classroom, not understanding what was going on half the time, as I recall. And then the nuns took me into this room by myself and set my meal down in front of me, and I finished the meal and got up and went out, and I saw all the children going home, so I figured that school was over, and I went home too. Well, of course, the nuns were almost had a fit, and they called the police and all this type of stuff. And I was afraid to go back to school because I had caused so much trouble. So I didn't go to school at St. Brendan's there for a while. I remember a couple of kids chasing me. I was redheaded, and for some reason redheads are the object of all sorts of things. One of these kids chasing me to the house, and I got in the door just in time. So in order to show my feeling for them, I pulled the chair up in front of the window and mooned them. I don't know whether I took my pants down or not. At any rate, they got the idea. Let's see. Then after that, the next place is Avenue U. Again, I don't remember any of the dates of these changes, but we next went to Avenue U. I learned here to read by the whole word method, because my father used to read the funny papers to me, and when he did, he would run his finger along the line, and so that I pretty soon began connecting the words with the the written word with the spoken word, and it was here that I really started to read. I remember that, I can't imagine them doing this, but they used to buy me dolls. I used to take them apart. Pretty obvious that if I had gone a little bit different direction, I could really have been a notorious person, because that certainly probably shows you something. At any rate, this is also the place where, right next to the, this again incidentally, backed onto the BMT tracks. We couldn't seem to get away from them except perhaps at Omar Park. And there were a couple of shops in the short distance between the exits from the BMT subway and to the street that we lived on, which paralleled the tracks. And there was, I remember, a bakery there, and I don't know what else, but there was certainly a so-called cigar store that sold all sorts of things, cigarettes and papers and toys and things like that. And I remember I learned very fast, and when I had observed that my mother would go in the stores and get some stuff and say, charge it. So this one day I walked into the candy store and got some candy, and I said to the guy, charge it, and he wrote it down. And I said, this is good stuff. So I walked next door to the bakery store and got myself a Charlotte Russe and God knows what else, and said, charge it. And he charged it. Now that evening when my mother came home, stopped at the store, she was informed that her son had charged these items. Well, I don't remember what I was told or whether anything was done to me, but I don't remember charging anymore after that. So I must have been, certainly have been warned that that just was not the thing for someone my age to do. Avenue U, I don't remember much more about that. I don't know how long we were there, because the next place we went to was Garrison Beach, and that takes quite a bit of recital, and so I'm going to break here and see what this is like. The record button on this damn machine is about the hardest one I've ever had to push down. Of course, it may be due to my current incapacity in various areas of muscular use. On to Garrison Beach. Garrison Beach covers quite a period in my life because it covers all of grammar school and high school as well, in contrast to the short periods of time which were spent at the previous locations. I have listed all the things that I can think of, but they unfortunately will not be in chronological order. However, I can think of probably the one that is the earliest in chronological order, and that is the time that I went to Resurrection School, which is Catholic, run by Dominican nuns, you know, with the beautiful white habits and the black head things, whatever the hell they call them. But I suppose I was, as my report card said, restless and inattentive. Oh, I do remember something exciting there from one of the earlier grades. It was an early grade because the grades progressed around the classrooms were in a U-shaped configuration, and the grades went up from left to right around the U, inverted U. And so this was at a very early age, and that was one of the nuns farted in class. Well, embarrassing enough to fart in public, but to be a nun and fart in class must have been doubly mortifying for her. However, I was able to top that because in a little later class, I was in the horizontal part of the U-shape, inverted U now. I must have been a pain in the ass because I waved my hand that I wanted to go to the bathroom, and the teacher ignored it, and the sister ignored me. And I kept waving my hand. She kept ignoring me, and finally I couldn't control anymore. I just pissed in my pants. Ran down into my shoes and stuff. which I don't know if my mother said anything about it when she heard of it, but I don't remember having any trouble getting to go to the bathroom after that. And aside from those two items, Resurrection School was, well, there were some things I remember. I remember around the 6th or 7th grade, I got the highest grade average in the class. I think it was 98%. And I took this report home to my mother, and she said, you know, if you had tried a little harder, you could have gotten 100%. Well, I think the next term, I barely passed because, you know, to work and not get a reward and to be greeted with that kind of a response is kind of deflating in a certain sense. However, I was intellectually curious. Curious intellectually. Anyway, I enjoyed studying for the sake of studying and for the sake of knowledge, and so it wasn't long before I actually got my grades back up to, you know, in the 90s average when I finished grammar school. I do remember that I'm reminded of Tom. I have tapes of Tom, and every once in a while he goes, and I noticed that on a previous recording I made, so I'm going to try and not do into the on this part of the tape. Anyway, Catholic students in New York, because it wasn't recognized then, of course, that a Catholic education was superior to any other kind, even if you did have to study Christian doctrine. There I go. But in New York, one had to take what were called a Regents exam. I don't remember what the subjects were, probably history and arithmetic and a couple of other things. And I remember I flunked my writing Regents. So I had to go back in my first year of high school and take that Regents over again in order to pass it. Now, all this actually is not on the list I've got here, but off the top of my head, as I keep thinking about going to Resurrection School, I guess I better subdue some of it. Even though we were Catholics and had Christian doctrine and stuff like that, the sins of the flesh were certainly available to our minds at any rate, and in practice to a fair number of the students, I'm sure. I being quite timid, I remember crossing the street once so I wouldn't have to say hello to a girl I knew. At any rate, being quite timid, and I was spared the pleasures of youthful experimentation and the forbidden fruits, at least to some extent. And where am I? Yes, I have the first item I have here is titled "Living in the Dump." Damn, I'm going to stop that. Anyway, nearby, you must remember at this time, Garrison Beach was separated from the rest of the city by some woods, swamps, Italian truck farms, and the like. So as a matter of fact, during one winter season, we were actually cut off from the rest of the city. But there was a dump there, which I and Harold Banker was my buddy. You know, kids tend to form close companionships with individuals for various peculiar reasons, and Harold Banker was a tall, husky fellow, quite strong, and he was Protestant. I guess I remember meeting him. I was down by the shore of the inlet, Garretson Inlet, and fishing for something. And he came along and said, what are you trying to catch? And I said, I'm trying to catch illies and keels, which of course I meant killies and eels. Killies are little sardine-like fish. They're probably since long gone because of the water pollution, but at that time there was a thriving life in the inlet. One could even find, we even get occasionally, what do they call them? These crabs with a long projecting spine underneath a big carapace that looked something like a helmet. At any rate, in this dump there were all sorts of things, of course, and having an inquiring mind, Harold and I used to spend a fair amount of time over there seeing what people threw out. I remember one of the things I picked up was some old love letters that had been thrown out. They were by an actor to his wife, and I remember he used to talk about his little actor playing in her garden, which even at that tender age I recognized the reference. Anyway, as I said, there are a good many items like that of various and sundry nature that we enjoyed poking around with. And in the dump, or at the dump, was the remains of an old Coney Island racetrack. The only things remaining were the concrete piers which supported the bleachers, and as you know, they had a high outside wall, and then these concrete piers would slope down at about I'd say 10 or 15 foot intervals down to the ground level. Well, one autumn, I guess it was, Harold Banker and I, it must have been autumn or we wouldn't have made the stove. We searched around the dump and found ourselves an old cot, an old bedding, an old we didn't worry about catching things, obviously. And we found an old oil drum or a drum of some kind and banged a hole in the bottom. And then we got some stovepipe and led that out the ceiling. And we screened off the front. And so we had essentially a little hut, which was three-quarter wall by these foot-wide concrete abutments. And it was quite comfortable. We were warm because of the fire. Our little cot was quite comfortable to rest or sleep or fiddle around on or whatever. And it was then that I realized that poverty was really only a state of mind, that provided that we had adequate food, that it would have been quite comfortable living there without all the worries of a real household. The next thing on the list I have on here, maybe I should go through this and try to tie some of it together. Since I started out with Harold Banker, let's continue with Harold Banker. Across from Garrison Avenue on the other side of the housing was this large swamp, which is now, I believe, at least allegedly a park. Let me find my pen. A park. And Harold Banker, and beyond that swamp was another of these dredged out inlets. I don't know why they dredged them out. There must have been some reason. Maybe they needed the sand or something somewhere. They used to have something like 60-foot channels. Well, Harold Banker and I made a raft and were poling around in that channel, at the end of which was a sort of a dam, because there had been at that time, there still was at that time, a old wooden grist mill that ran from the tidal flow. When the tide went in, the water would fill up the reservoir, and then the gate would be closed, and the water would, at low tide, would then run out through the grist mill, grind the mill. It was said that the mill ground flour for Washington's troops, but, that was essentially hearsay. I wasn't there at the time. At any rate, just beyond the reservoir was the road, one of the main roads. As a matter of fact, it was Avenue U, which curved around and didn't go into Garretson Beach, which was left for Garretson Avenue to do. And Harold Banker and I were as I said on the previous slide, Harold Banker and I were poling along on our raft, and who should I see but at the end of the inlet, but my father standing there with his car. This was quite a distance. My eyesight was good. I was telling my father at that distance. Of course, I had been forbidden, I don't know why, why even bothered forbidding me, but for some reason I had been forbidden to do what I was doing, whatever it was, poling, I guess, around on the raft and the channels. I guess my parents were worried about my drowning or something. And so my father saw us, and he recognized us and waved for me to come over, to join him. Which being frightened at having been caught in flagrante delicto, I poled too vigorously, and of course with poling, you have to be very careful about not getting the pole too engaged in the bottom, and as a result I ended up in the water with my, I wasn't dressed in old clothes, they were, reasonable clothes, so there I was soaking wet. Got over to my father, who belted me beside the side of the head, and proceeded to either take me home or send me home. I don't remember which. But that didn't keep me from going rafting or anything like that. Harold Banker and I also found in that same area an abandoned rowboat. It was a heavy little bugger. It was very sturdily built. I believe it could have been used in the Arctic ice floes. Very difficult to maneuver, of course. It must have been about 10 feet long or so. Well, we rowed it over to Garretson Inlet, which was quite a row, where we proceeded to outfit it with a mast and a sail. The mast and the sail were iron pipe. And it was then that I learned very quickly about ducking when the boom swang around, because bad enough being hit with a wooden boom, but certainly an iron pipe made a little bit of difference. We had a lot of fun with that, and as a matter of fact, at one time we went out into Jamaica Bay. Jamaica Bay was a big inlet from which these other inlets of which I've spoken all sprayed out from, you might say. And I should have said radiated, that's the word I was trying to think of, radiated out from. Well, we were having a fine time, and with a little help from the tide and the wind, as I say, the thing was as heavy as could be, and so the wind had to have a fair wind to move it. Well, we decided to turn around and go back. Did we do this with a sail? I have a feeling we did this with just oars. There was no sail involved in this part. This must have been previous to the sail incident. At any rate, we decided to go back, and we found that row as hard as we could, we were not making any progress against the tide, but which was slowly but inexorably moving us out toward the Atlantic Ocean. The idea of floating around in the Atlantic Ocean held no thrill for me then, as it doesn't now, especially since being a youngster, the onus of having done such a stupid thing would fall upon me, and God knows what punishments I could envisage or restrictions. But however, fortunately, a power boat came chugging along, and we waved frantically to him, and apparently he recognized that we were in some sort of distress. And so we hitched a rope onto the end of the power boat. He very kindly towed us into Gerritsen Inlet. I recall the most excruciating thing about that trip was the midges, sand midges used to get in your bathing suit and stuff like that. They would get in your crotch and bite. Well, being towed by these people and under their observation, I felt that it would be impolite to scratch myself where the bites were, and so I had to suffer through these midge bites until we got away from the rescuers. The water provided me with a lot of experiences. I learned to swim by getting an empty gallon can or something like that, holding on to it with one hand and paddling with the other, which led to the dog paddle, and then finally to the crawl and things of that nature, which come rapidly if you're in the water all the time. At any rate, since the channel was quite deep, matter of fact, you could walk out about at low tide, say, you walk out about a dozen feet, and bang, the thing dropped off, and it was 60 feet down. So my mother, of course, being concerned that I not do anything foolish, she forbade me to swim across the channel. I don't recall how wide the channel was. It was at least a city block, or something like that, on that order, at any rate. And so she said, I remember she came home one evening and said, "Have you been out swimming?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Did you swim across the channel?" "No, I didn't swim across the channel." "Well, what did you swim? How did you swim?" "Oh, I swam out to the middle and swam back." Well, I don't think I had any restrictions on my swimming after that, and it led to a good deal of swimming, of course. I was very careful. You know, one is not just supposed to swim right after eating and stuff like that. I was very careful to follow such rules, and I also was familiar with a dead man's float and all sorts of things that were useful in the water in case you got cramps or something like that. Another incident I remember with respect to the channel was the result of a gala winter party on the yacht which used to be moored out in the channel. The channel was shaped something like an appendix, with out of one side of which was another man-made channel which was straight and narrow and had been shored up on both sides with lumber and piers. But anyway, down near the right-hand end of this channel was this white yacht on which there were lots of boisterous parties, as I recall. And one winter, things were apparently colder because the channel used to freeze over. And this was salt water, of course. And it used to freeze over fairly thickly. I mean, it wasn't the kind of, you could skate on it. So it was well frozen. One winter during a drunken party, one of the celebrators fell overboard. And he didn't come up. Apparently the ice was he was sufficiently disoriented that the ice effectively held him under. He did come up, however, the next spring. He was all sorts of funny colors like green and stuff, floating face down in the water. And I recall the police coming and hauling him out. It wasn't a very happy sight, but then, so that's the way it goes when you get involved in drunken parties over the ice. Another thing, there used to be a place called Sutter's on the other side of the canal, which dealt with maintaining boats and docking them and stuff like that. And there used to be a watchman there that had a room at one end of the big barge there. His name was Ernie. He was Italian, little fella. And I don't remember too much about him, but Harold Bank and I used to go over and and talk to him quite a bit and get regaled about all sorts of Italian stories. I remember one of the things he told us was, in order to arouse the girls when he danced, he used to keep a handkerchief in his armpit, and then when he danced with the girl, he'd put this handkerchief in his jacket pocket, and presumably the male pheromones would turn on the Italian girls. I never got to try it or verify it in the other way, but it was an interesting story. Also, with this little rowboat that Harold Banker and I, when my cousins, the twins, the Meering twins, Claire and Marie, came down, everybody swore you couldn't tell them apart, but I had no problem because Claire had a curve in her nose, and Marie had a straight line nose seen in profile, and there was no question about who was who. At any rate, they used to come down. They came down sometime with a girlfriend or something like that, and I don't know who else, but at least the two twins went out boating in this little boat going around the inlet. Well, the inlet was a repository for a good many things, having a sewage plant in it, for example. And not only that, but it was a great place for people on boats or people who would come and park their cars by the shore for some backseat lovemaking, would discard their condoms into the waters thereof and go happily on their way. I remember one of the girls, I don't remember whether it was one of the twins or someone else, that was dragging her hand in the water, you know, as you would on a nice pristine lake. You lazing a gondola like along the water, you know, just your hand dragging the water. And I remember telling my cousin, I said, I wouldn't drag my hand in the water if I were you. And she said, well, I don't see why I shouldn't. I mean, there's nothing here that's going to bite me. And so, rather than be brutally explicit with her, I held my peace, and a few moments later, she something caught on her hand, and she lifted it up out of the water and looked at it, and of course it was a condom, which she hastily flipped back into the water, and thenceforth kept her hands inside the boat. And that seems, looking at the list I have here, that seems to cover that, except there's one other little item here, I think, that in one sense is probably one of the more rewarding things that I experienced at the time. Across the street from us was a bachelor by the name of John, short, heavy-set fellow. And I remember one rainy day. It was raining like mad. It was really raining. And this was later on after I must have been close to high school age, if not in high school, because the swamp, of which I had previously spoken, had been filled in. And it was a big stretch of sand. Tremendous. And so this one rainy day, I don't know, I guess John and the old man were in the house, and I was there too. I don't know if anybody else said, but someone said, it wasn't me, obviously, it must have been my father, said, let's take a walk. So we got on our raincoats and our rain hats, and we went out in the rain, the pouring rain, and we went over to the filled-in swamp, to the so-called park, and we tromped around in that rain, in that desolate, barren plain of sand, until we were tromped out, and then we tromped back home and relaxed. Well, that's a real experience. I don't know what feelings it produces, but it's one of the more memorable experiences I felt that I had. One that I kind of treasure. Also, I remember one time during the winter. Of course, then we used to really have snow in the winter time, and my father, of course, was on call. I don't remember what his position was at the time, but, here I go again. But he could get called out on these winter nights to go and see about a leak or a break in the line or something like that. I remember this one winter night, and there was quite a bit of snow on the ground. He used to go out in all sorts of weather, of course. He took me with him, and that was also a very interesting experience. I don't remember anything about the trip except the darkness and the cold and the snow and the snowfall and stuff like that, but it was a real thrilling experience for someone my age. My father also used to take me down for a while to Coney Island, to the so-called motorbike races. And what you had was you would have motorcycles going around, and directly in back of them would be bicyclists. Now, I don't think they ever separated, but they used to go faster and faster, and they used to race around this track, which was, of course, when they got up speed, they were really banked. And it was an exciting sport, I suppose, if that kind of thing turns you on, which it did turn me on for a while. My father also used to take me down to the Half Moon Hotel, which was a big hotel in Coney Island, to communion breakfasts. Well, I wasn't particularly religious even then. However, I did enjoy the communion breakfast because the breakfasts were excellent, and you could chow down at the expense of listening to a boring sermon. You could chow down after communion, which in those days, of course, you had to fast from midnight. And the thing that I liked best of all was the fact that you used to get half and half with your breakfast cereal, which was, to me, was really the piece of resistance, as they say. I remember getting acquainted with a Jewish boy in the Half Moon Hotel and going up in his room on the god-awfulest highest floor and looking out the window. I couldn't have been too afraid of heights in those days. Must be something that developed, because I remember looking out his window and it was a long way down. That was lots of fun. I don't remember what we would do. Most, you know what kids do when they're together, fiddle around in useless ways. And let's see, I have an item down here. Blanket party. Yes, my parents every once in a while would have a birthday party or something for me. And the one I remember in particular was one that ended up, I think this was a Halloween party. It ended up with the kids sitting around the floor with their hands all in a circle, and their hands under a blanket. And my father was at one point, and he told this story. But what they'd done is they'd gotten all sorts of things, like they peeled grapes, and they had cooked spaghetti and let it get cold. They had other things too, of which I can't remember. But I remember he'd tell this story about, you know, somebody going down the deep or dismembered or something like that. And then he would pass around the grapes and say, "Here's the eyeballs." He'd pass around the spaghetti, and here's the veins, which of course elicited numerous shrieks from the girls. And it was a fun thing. The other thing I remember distinctly from home, three items of food. I know when you bought chicken to make chicken soup, you got the whole chicken, including the head and the legs and everything. And I distinctly remember seeing the chicken legs boiling away in the chicken soup. It was good chicken soup. I'm not so sure we haven't lost something by eliminating all those extra goodies from it. But it certainly was memorable. The only other thing I remember is my mother used to make what she called floating island, in which she used to make proper custard. I hate to say this, but it's probably what I would call German custard in contrast to other kinds of custard. Excuse me. The custard was fairly liquid. It was like a very heavy cream, and it took a little work to make, having to, you had to bring the milk not quite to the boil and all sorts of good stuff like that. Well, she used to make this custard. On the top, she'd decorate it with lady fingers, which is where the floating island business came from, and that was oh so good. The other thing I remember about the cooking was that on prior to Lent, I guess, my grandmother used to make what she called Fastnachtkuchen, and these were round. I guess the nearest thing would be an old-fashioned donut, except that instead of being circular with a hole, it was just a big glob of stuff. But they were also delightful, and I regret that I haven't experienced them for God knows how long. Somewhere I have a collection of recipes that my mother wrote down for Tom, who kindly made a copy for me. And I know that Floating Island, I'm sure, is in there, and I don't know whether Fastnachtkuchen or Fast Night cookies are in there too, but hopefully they would be. And perhaps someday, when you are trying to recapture the past, you might want to try them. Let's see. Sodium. Ah, yes. One of my hobbies, about which has left mute evidence on the desk, which Barbara has, which was scarred with acid as a result of my experiments. I used to experiment with the damnedest things. There was a chemical supply house down in Brooklyn called Imran Amond, and they would sell you anything you asked for. And one of the items I got was sodium, which was lots of fun because you kept it in oil because it very readily combines with oxygen, and so therefore it would essentially rust away, as it were, if you didn't cover it with oil. It was a soft, silvery metal you could cut with a knife, but you could go over to the beach, for example, and cut off a couple of little pieces, just throw them out in the water. Well, the sodium and the water combined chemically so vigorously that the heat was sufficient to ignite the hydrogen which was given off, because the sodium would combine to form sodium hydroxide, NaOH, and release hydrogen from the water. As a result of the heat, this escaping hydrogen would burst into flame, and it was very exciting to watch. Another one of the fun things I played with was the phosphorus stick. You used to be able to buy stick phosphorus in a can, and I don't remember how I kept that. I think you just have to keep that in a closed container. However, it's tricky stuff. It has a very low melting point, and I was going to try and do something with it where I heated it, and when I heated it, it ran out of the container and off the edge of the desk and onto my lap. Well, phosphorus gives you phosphorus burns, especially since this was burning. And so, of course, I notified my mother of the incident, and she rushed me over to the nearest druggist, which was, it was way over on Avenue U. I don't know how she got me there. Anyway, we got over to the druggist, and he said, well, what you do is you've washed it off. He says, now all you do is soak it with, keep it white of egg on it, and that will absorb whatever the phosphorus there is, or do something. And sure enough, I recovered from that too. Something that was a little more hazardous that resulted from the same kind of adventures or experimentation. I had an old shell. I think it must have been around 50 caliber. Maybe I think it was probably smaller than that. I used to make this gunpowder type stuff. For one part of potassium nitrate, one part of sulfur, and one part of carbon, which makes a fine explosive. Well, I filled the cartridge with this stuff, and then I fashioned Out the end that originally had the primer in it was a small hole, and I put a fuse in that. And on the other end, I attached a rubber hose, small rubber hose, about quarter of an inch or half an inch in diameter, which ran into a bellows. I don't know where I probably picked this up in a dump or something like that. It was probably an old douchebag or something. And I figured, well, I'd light the thing, and when the powder ignited, it would blow this bag up. Well, unfortunately, my reasoning was sound up to a certain extent. However, there is a time factor involved in things. Mechanical systems can only respond within a certain time, dependent upon their structure and their configuration and their what you would call the stiffness of the materials involved. Well, the stiffness of the materials involved was such that the cartridge blew up before it inflated the bag, and there were flying pieces of copper all over the place, one of which zipped along my middle finger of my right hand, and I still have the Y-shaped scar as a result. It went down to the bone. A few pieces embedded themselves in my leg. I ignored them and just picked them out. But the big one, I had to go to the druggist. This is a good system. I don't know why the hell we don't just throw out most of the doctors and rely on the druggist the way we did in those days. Anyway, I went to the druggist, and again the druggist as well. I think it was the druggist, or was it the doctor? I don't know. I'd have to ask my mother. And at any rate, the story was that there was no sense in suturing it or anything like that, it would heal from the inside out. This skin is quite thin over that portion of the bone. And had to keep it moist, and sure enough, it healed up nicely, except, of course, I have this scar as evidence of my youthful enterprise. The other item I have down here that relates to Garrison Beach is the only one that has to do with the yard at this particular time. One of the things that has made me so ungardenable was the fact that in the fall, or whenever they lost their blooms, my mother used to make me pull up the hollyhocks. Hollyhocks are tall enough for a normal human being, but I was a little boy, and those damn hollyhocks have these little things on them. You used to be able to send away for itch powder, and I believe they must have made them out of hollyhock things, because those damn hollyhocks used to cause me more problems with itching, and so as a result, I was imbued with an intense loathing for plants and their maintenance, which has not died to this day. During this period, one time or another, we used to go down to Luna Park when it was still there. It burned down eventually. But I would describe it for you. You can see the pictures in the memorabilia albums I have. It was a fabulous place, especially for a youngster who didn't look beyond the surface. It was all wood, and it had fantastic buildings with all covered with light bulbs, and it had the one I remember that had a shoot-the-chutes, which were lots of fun. They had big, long slides that went up around 2 or 3 stories high, upon which you could slide. I never did. It used to give me squirgles in my stomach, and I couldn't take it. I guess I could never be an astronaut. At any rate, the one thing I do remember about this place is just inside the entrance. Just inside the entrance was a big stand with marzipan, which of course clearly points up the fact that Coney Island at that time was very German. And New York, I guess Brooklyn was very German too. At any rate, it was German enough so that you would have marzipan there, which goes over big in Germany but isn't very popular here. I never liked it, but it was fabulous. It was astounding for a kid to see all the different vegetables and things that they made out of this almond paste. The only other recollection I have of Luna Park was when I was much, much younger. I don't even know. I was certainly before I was living at Gerritsen Beach, and I'm trying to see if I have it listed anywhere else. No, I guess not. But I remember my mother's father worked as a waiter in, I guess it must have been Luna Park or someplace like that. It was either he or my father's father who drove the seltzer water wagon, took me to Luna Park in the back.